Hello everybody and welcome to another edition of Spartan Center here on LCAT. I'm Colin Casey, joined by Matt Rodolakis and Patrick Varhue. It is Thursday, October 13th, and we begin with the Red Sox season coming to a very abrupt ending. Guys, the Red Sox being swept by the Cleveland Indians in the ALDS. Matt, I don't think anybody saw this coming.
I definitely didn't. It was just extremely disappointing, and it was like the polar opposite of what you saw to them during that 11-game winning streak in September. And it's just like everything that could have went against them did, and it was just a really disappointing end to what was otherwise a good season.
And Pat, you can definitely say that starting pitching was really a problem. Rick Porcello, David Price not getting it done. Clay Buchholz pitched well, but he only pitched about 4 innings.
4 innings, yeah.
So
it's pretty disgusting that Clay Buchholz pitched the best between the three of them. David Price getting paid $30 million a year to do what? Pitched terribly in the postseason. Rick Porcello, Cy Young contender, didn't pitch like that Thursday night. Pretty disgusting performance from their pitching and their offense, and John Farrell should have been fired immediately after the season, but of course that didn't happen, and we're going to see him again in 2017, which is pretty disgusting.
yeah, Dave Dombrowski just announcing that John Farrell will be coming back for the 2017 season. How big of a leash do you think John Farrell will have, Pat?
Well, it seems like Dave Dombrowski loves John Farrell, so I don't know. Maybe they'll go 0-162. He'll probably still be there. I'm just kidding. I don't know. He'll probably be around. I'd say if they're not really competing for the playoffs by the All-Star break, I would think Farrell might get the go. But Dombrowski said he doesn't really care about in-game management. He doesn't think that's the most important part of being a manager. So I think that's John Farrell's biggest weakness. But if Dombrowski doesn't care, I think Farrell will be there next season and maybe 2018.
We also, with this ending of the season, David Ortiz, final season, so pretty sad way for his career to wrap up. Been a very important piece of the Red Sox team, winning 3 World Series championships for a team that hadn't won any in 86 years, Matt. So you got to admit that's got to hurt a lot for losing the first round.
Definitely. It was so tragic that that's how they sent him off. I mean, it really sucks because such a great career, such a storied career, such a great postseason history for him especially, and to end it like that, especially with him not having a great series, was just rough for everyone.
Now we'll talk about your favorite David Ortiz moments over his storied Red Sox career. Pat, we'll start with you.
I'd say my 2 favorites were last year in Tampa Bay when he hit his 500th home run, and Don Orsillo. Just everyone knew Don Orsillo was going to be leaving at the end of the year, who was the beloved NESN commentator for the Red Sox, and David Ortiz hit his 500th home run, and that was just a great moment for Ortiz and for Orsillo, so I really like that. And then obviously in 2013 in the ALCS when he hit the grand slam and the cop was dancing with his hands over the air, that was just awesome. Basically pushed the Red Sox towards the World Series, and I definitely think David Ortiz is going to be missed more than any other player in, I think, Red Sox history.
Matt, your thoughts?
The one thing that jumps out at me when I think about David Ortiz is the 2013 World Series against the Cardinals, when in 6 games he hit .688, which is just superhuman. He had a couple of homers in that series, and throughout that entire playoffs, including the Grand Slam Pat mentioned, he was just unreal. But that was easily one of the greatest World Series performances of all time.
Yeah, my favorite memory, we were a little younger, remember those, 2004 ALCS. Red Sox facing elimination, down 3-0 against the Yankees, and then he hits a walk-off home run in Game 4 that would lead them on the greatest comeback in MLB history in a postseason series. With those 2 walk-offs, including the one in Game 5, I just think of that as kind of a stepping stone to becoming one of the most clutch hitters in the history of the game. And that's what I remember him that's what I remember him the most for, is that his just amazing clutch play, especially in the postseason. Now we head to the offseason for the Red Sox. What do you think the Red Sox need to do to make themselves World Series contenders again?
I'll start. I think they should go out and get someone who can be their designated hitter. If that's Edwin Encarnacion, if that's Mark Trumbo, I think they need to really go out and get one of those 2 guys. Encarnacion's obviously going to be more expensive than Trumbo, but I think both of them are good power hitters. Neither of them are ever going to fill the shoes of David Ortiz, but I think if they can go out and get one of those 2 guys, their offense can maintain a very high level that they're at currently. And then I think they need to improve their bullpen, whether that's going after a guy like Aroldis Chapman, who's obviously going to be tough to get, or a guy like Joe Smith. They really need some bullpen help. I think once Carson Smith comes back in the middle of the season next year, hopefully he could be like a right-handed Andrew Miller for the Red Sox, and that would be great if they could add some depth to him. Whether or not we'll see Tazawa and Uehara back with the Sox next year, that's still up for debate and question.
I think, like Pat said, probably one of the biggest things right now is just to replace the hole that is left by David Ortiz in the middle of the lineup, which you would like to be filled by someone like Encarnacion or Trumbo. One of those two guys would be most preferable. And then I think they should really make it a priority to re-sign Brad Ziegler. I think he was a great addition for them this season, and he performed well down the stretch after they picked him up. And I think he would be relatively inexpensive for the quality reliever that he is, and they do need bullpen help, so I think he should be like the second priority on the list this offseason.
Yeah, I agree with you guys on replacing Ortiz, the DH spot. The thing is originally they were thinking maybe having Hanley Ramirez be the DH, but he played really well defensively at first base. So no matter who you bring in, you probably keep them at the DH and not worry about their fielding ability. I would probably lean towards Encarnacion over Trumbo just because he's a really good hitter at Fenway Park, and I can see him hitting over 40 home runs at Fenway. And then also, like you guys mentioned, bullpen. You can never have too many relievers. There's a pretty good market out there for the Red Sox, so I think Dave Dombrowski will try to make something happen this offseason. Now, looking at the rest of the MLB playoffs, who is the favorite now for the World Series and why?
The favorite has always been and remains the Cubs because they're simply the best team in baseball all around, and there's just no question about that. And it seems like they're on this kind of destiny. They have a destiny. It's sort of similar to the Red Sox in 2013, where it just seems like no matter what, nobody's going to stop them.
I disagree. I'd go with the Cleveland Indians. What they showed me in this Red Sox series is that even without their two best starting pitchers of Carrasco and Salazar, that they can still beat a very good team like the Boston Red Sox. And then I look at the National League, and I just think the Cubs, they're going to be a great team at one point. They're a great team now, but I still think they're too young to perform in the postseason. John Lester leads the rotation. He's an older guy, but the rest of the guys are still pretty young. I think the Indians have more veterans kind of scattered all over the place, and I think they have a lot of talent and can go on.
The Cubs have already shown that they can perform in the postseason. They've gotten meaningful contributions from guys like Wilson Contreras, Javi Baez, Addison Russell,
Went to the
Chris
NLCS
Bryant.
last year.
They were in the NLCS last year, and their pitching staff is actually loaded with veterans with Jake Arrieta, John Lester, and John Lackey. Really, and even Jason Hamill. Really, the only guy who's not that experienced is Kyle Hendricks.
Yeah, but offensively, they're still
Offensively, they're young, but they're a very good team, and they have postseason experience. So there is no weakness on this team.
I still think they're pretty young, and I think that the Indians.
They're not that young.
I think the Indians showed me more against the Red Sox than the Cubs just did against the Giants. So I think the Red Sox were a better team than the Giants. The Indians just swept Boston. The Cubs had to bring them to 4 games to beat San Francisco, and I truly think that the Indians are just better than the Cubs.
I think the Red Sox played just extremely poorly in that series.
They did play extremely
poorly. Which made the Indians look better than they are, and I think that the Giants played above their abilities in that series against the Cubs, so I think it's still clearly the Cubs.
And you can't really denounce the Cubs. They won 100 games last year, or this past season. The talent's there, whether it be young or whether it be old. The talent is definitely there for the Cubs. We now head to the NFL. We look at last week, the Atlanta Falcons beating a very tough Denver Broncos team.
Here we go.
And they moved to 4-1 on the season. Pat, we'll start with you. Matt Ryan throwing for 267 yards and a touchdown. What are your thoughts on Matt Ryan?
Matt Ryan had a pretty good week. It doesn't mean he's a good quarterback. Devontae Freeman's kind of stepped up his game the past couple weeks as a great running back. He still has a great offensive line with Mack as his center, snapping him that football. Obviously, after Julio Jones' huge performance against the Panthers, Denver obviously had to focus their efforts on Julio Jones, and I think with Paxton Lynch, starting for Denver, not Trevor Siemian, their offense was a little mismatched, a little shaky, and just nothing was going right for Denver in that game, and that's why Atlanta won, and that's why Matt Ryan had an all-right game. Pretty good. Not awesome. Pretty good.
He threw 267 yards, and then again, Julio Jones had less than 30.
Yeah, I know.
So,
I believe he had 36.
So you were talking about last week about how it's all Julio Jones, and he had less than 30 yards, and he still.
That's only because they focused all their defensive attention on Julio and left all the receivers wide open with no people even covering him.
Exactly.
That's ridiculous.
How often do you see Tammy breaking free? He had like 100 yards
He's still a solid tight end.
He's been a solid tight end this year, and
this year because everyone's devoting their attention to Julio
But people
Jones.
were doing that before too, and yet nobody was breaking out with Matt Ryan last year. Why? Why is it this year?
Because Matt Ryan sucked a little more last year than he does now.
So are you acknowledging that he has improved?
No, I'm just saying that.
That's exactly what you just said. That is exactly what you just said.
He underperformed last year, and this year.
So in relation to last year,
Yes,
year,
he's better. He's better this year than he is last year. That does
I'll
not
take
mean
that.
does not
I will
mean
take
he's
that.
does not mean he's become a better quarterback. Nor does it mean he's a good quarterback. He is the most overrated quarterback in the National Football League.
He could have thrown for 350 yards, 4 touchdowns, and no picks, and you'd still be saying the same thing.
Yeah, we'll see how long this lasts. We'll see how long he's top of the list.
He's got a big test this upcoming week going to Seattle, so we'll have to take a look at that. We now move on to the Panthers. They are 1-4 on the season. That's good enough for last in their respective division. Is it time to panic in Carolina?
I do think it's time to panic. Should they fire Ron Rivera? That's a interesting question. Should the Cardinals fire Bruce Arians? He's another head coach whose team is underperforming. I don't think I would fire either of them, but I would definitely maybe make an offensive coordinator change, a defensive coordinator change in Carolina, especially because they were just made it to the Super Bowl last year. Now they're 1-4. Obviously, Cam Newton was injured this past week, but last year they still wouldn't have lost, even if Derek Anderson was the quarterback.
I agree with everything Pat said. I think it's time to hit the panic button in Carolina, because if you think about it, even if they finish this season undefeated, that's still 12-4, which is a great record, but they were 15-1 last year. They were the best team in the NFL by far. And I think that what I agree with what Pat said is that even without Cam Newton last year, the team would have beaten the Bucs. So I think this is very, very worrying for the Panthers.
I agree with Pat. I wouldn't fire Ron Rivera just yet. But if they lose next week to a New Orleans Saints team that's got one of the worst defenses in the league, I think that question can definitely be up for discussion. I mean, this team, again, went 15-1 last year. How do you go from 15-1 to starting 1-4? I don't know if there's ever been a team that successful that's fallen off that quickly, especially a team that hasn't lost as much like guys in the offseason. I mean, they did lose Josh Norman. That is huge. But other than that, they stayed relatively intact. They still have Jonathan Stewart as their running back. They still have Greg Olsen, tight end, Luke Kuechly, guys like that have been stars for them.
Stewart's been injured since week 2, though. Should be coming back this week, so that might be good for them.
Yeah, maybe that will help them out because Stewart, I think they had the best run game in the league last year.
They did.
So maybe Stewart's return will spark something on offense along with Cam Newton. They need to win. This is a must-win game for them against the Saints this week. Now we go back to our rankings. We did quarterbacks, we did running backs, top 5 wide receivers this week. Let's just skip 1 and 2, considering I'm pretty sure we all have the same thing. Number 1, Antonio Brown. Number 2, Julio Jones. And Matt, just it's pretty obvious why they're top 2.
I think it's just Antonio Brown is probably the best route runner in the game right now, and he just catches anything that's anywhere near him. And Julio is unstoppable. I mean, you can put 2 guys on him, and he'll just go up over them, and he'll catch the ball over both of them. He's just ridiculous. So they're just video game.
Pat, you gotta agree with that, right?
Yeah, I very much agree. Julio Jones makes that Falcons offense look good. So yeah, they're obviously top 2.
All right, Matt, we'll look at the rest of the list now. At number 3, you have Odell Beckham Jr., correct?
I do, and I think in terms of talent, I think he's probably, honestly, maybe even ahead of Antonio Brown and right up there with Julio, just in terms of God-given ability and size and all that. But I think that it's obvious that he's struggled this year, so it was pretty easy to leave him out of my top 2, but I had to include him on this list because we all know how good he is.
Pat, you're number 3.
I have DeAndre Hopkins. I looked last year, there wasn't really a clear starting quarterback in Houston. Switched around a few times, and they wasn't very good. This year, it is Brock Osweiler who's their starting quarterback, but he's doing all right. He hasn't had a breakout season like he did last year, but they have a better running game in Lamar Miller. They have Will Fuller, who's doing great catching the football. So I think Hopkins had a slower start to the season than he did last year, but he's still playing well. And I think DeAndre Hopkins is a very good wide receiver, probably third in the NFL.
I got Hopkins at number 3 as well. Like you mentioned, he's got more weapons around him now. Will Fuller, Lamar Miller. That's going to only make him a better wide receiver when you got defenders having to focus on these other guys. So I have Hopkins at number 3 as well. Number 4, Matt, who do you have?
I have Hopkins at the 4, and he had an amazing season last year and a great season the year before, but it's kind of ironic when you think about how last year they had just a revolving door at quarterback with guys like TJ Yates and Brian Hoyer, and they were better at getting him the ball than Brock Osweiler's been this year. So I think it's not an issue of him not playing well so much as it is they just can't get him the ball. And I think if they can begin getting him the touches he needs, he'll become the same DeAndre Hopkins we know.
Pat, how about you?
At my number 4, I have A.J. Green. Andy Dalton's had actually a pretty good start to the season, very quietly. He's had a very good start to the season, but A.J. Green is like the mold to that offense. Sometimes you just see him go off, and he'll just have a huge game. Unlike, I think, many other wide receivers. If I'm looking at a game where I'm hoping for someone to go off, I think A.J. Green's my guy because he just can just go off. And I don't know. He can just have huge games. He can have kind of small games, but I really like that explosiveness from A.J. Green. He can go up. He can catch a cool football. He's actually a pretty big guy.
He is.
I like him.
I'm going to go with Odell Beckham Jr. at number 4. He's been a bit of a head case at the start of this season. You know, he's had his fair share of problems with Norman and Xavier Rhodes. Also, the production kind of dipped a little bit against the Vikings. But he had his first touchdown of the year against the Packers. Had a solid game in that one. And he also made up with the kicking net that he had a bit of an altercation with a couple weeks earlier. So I'm going with Beckham Jr., you know, fastest receiver or he has the most receiving yards in however many games he's played to start a career. So you can't just overlook that. He's got to be in the top 5, in my opinion. We go down to number 5. Matt, who do you have?
I picked A.J. Green at the 5. I think he's just a really impressive guy because he's not really a big guy. I think he's about 6'4", but he's really lanky and he's long limbs. But he can do a lot of things at the wide receiver position. He can stay short. He can catch the ball in the backfield and then go make players miss in the open field, or he can go deep and he can jump over guys and catch it over them and moss them. And he's just a lot of fun to watch, and he's a great receiver.
Pat?
He's certainly a wild animal. Number 5, I have Allen Robinson. I think he makes Blake Bortles a lot better quarterback than Blake Bortles really is. I think Blake Bortles secretly has one of the best wide receiver duos in the NFL with Allen Robinson and Allen Hurns. Kind of weird that they both have the first name of Allen. Then he has a mediocre running game with T.J. Yeldon and Chris Ivory, but Allen Robinson really steps up as like the deep down the field guy. Last year it seemed like they were always firing into Hurns for the touchdowns. Robinson had a fair share of touchdowns himself, so I think Allen Robinson is quietly top 5 wide receiver in the NFL. Higher than OBJ due to OBJ's head casing isms so far to start the season.
I'm going to go with Demaryius Thomas at number 5. DT's been off to not an amazing start this year, but he's still got those consistent receiving yards per week. He has a rookie quarterback, so he's definitely getting used to him throwing the ball instead of guys like Peyton Manning that he had earlier in his career. Demaryius Thomas is one of the best deep threats in the game. He like you said with A.J. Green, he's always destined for a big game, that just kind of like an out-of-the-blue big game, even with a decent quarterback. So that's why Demaryius Thomas is on my list at number 5. Now we head to the picks this week. We start off Thursday Night Football. Denver going to San Diego to take on the Chargers.
Denver's got the best defense in the NFL. Chargers haven't looked great. They've just found every possible heartbreaking way to lose a game this year. And Denver's just a much better team. I'm going Denver all the way.
I agree. Denver is just the better team, have a very good defense, and Simeon's going to be back as a quarterback. I think it's going to be a pretty easy win for the Broncos.
Yeah, I'm going with the Broncos too. And you talk about their great defense. I think there was a quarterback last week that might have carved up that defense.
Yeah, for 267 yards, I wouldn't really call that carving up.
He still beat them and scored 23 points on them, so I think that's
Congrats, man.
Pretty impressive.
Congratulations, dude.
Pat, maybe one day you'll finally buy into the hype.
Never.
Maybe Matt Ryan
Never.
goes and plays like, I don't know, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, then I'll think he isn't overrated, but he's certainly overrated right now.
The thing is just nobody puts him in the same sentence as Peyton Manning and Tom Brady.
But people think he's good.
Because
He's been very good this year. He's been the best quarterback
He's an
in football.
above-average quarterback.
He has been the best quarterback in football this season.
Okay.
Will you acknowledge that?
I think statistically he's been the best quarterback
Wow.
in the NFL.
All right.
I can't believe you said that.
We are making progress, folks.
We are moving in the right
that doesn't
direction.
mean he has been.
But he has been, and
No,
that's undeniable.
He has Julio Jones.
Okay, we're done with this, Colin. Next
Okay, we're going to go
Next
to
game.
the 1-4 Panthers, as we mentioned earlier. They're taking on the Saints. Pat, we'll start with you.
I don't know, I said also. I am going with the Saints. I look at Carolina and just see too big of a mess. I think Drew Brees can light up this defense. I mean, 2 weeks ago we saw Julio Jones light up the defense of the Carolina Panthers. I think that Drew Brees can toss down the field to a guy like Brandon Cooks, and I think it's going to be a pretty close, high-scoring game that I think the Saints should be able to win, even though their defense is not great.
I also picked the Saints for pretty much the same reasons. I think Drew Brees is just going to have his way with that defense. And I think it'll be a shootout offensively, and I think I said the same thing a couple weeks ago, but when it's an offensive shootout, it's hard to pick against Drew Brees.
Yeah, I could see this game being like the Giants-Saints game last year with guys throwing 5 or 6 touchdowns, especially if Cam Newton returns. He threw 5 touchdowns against the Saints last year. That's kind of the reason why I'm going to go with the Panthers. I feel like there's a big bounce-back game for them. Newton going to be back. Derek Anderson didn't play well at all last week. So I think Cam can just get back to his MVP self and lead his team to victory. Next, we have the Baltimore Ravens going to New York to take on the Giants.
I'm actually going to go with the Ravens. They've had 2 tough losses. They just fired Mark Trestman as their offensive coordinator. So I think they're really going to have to wake it up if they want to even compete for maybe the wild card, because I think it's clear the Steelers are going to win this division. I think that the Giants have also lost the past 2 weeks, past 3 weeks. Now 2-3, last in the NFC East.
It hurts. It does.
I just don't think they're as good as Baltimore offensively or defensively.
I'm going to agree with you on that at this point. I mean, I don't think Baltimore is an elite offensive team, but the Giants' offense has definitely underperformed. Their defense has been pretty streaky. Some quarter, or like one quarter, they'll come out and shut them down, give up 3 points in a quarter. Other times they'll give up a couple of touchdowns. So I think the Ravens are the more consistent team, and that is why I'm going with Baltimore in this game.
I originally picked Baltimore, but I'm changing it. I'm going Giants, baby. Big Blue. I think that they're gonna have just a good game. I think they're gonna put it together this week, because every once in a while they can get it all going, get it all clicking and play well. So I think that this is gonna be one of those weeks at home, and I think they're gonna do a good job against Flacco, and they're gonna put up enough points to get the W.
I really hope you're right. I really do. I just don't have the confidence that I did have in them week 2. So. We go to kind of a team that's done the opposite of the Giants. They started off poorly, and they've really picked it up. The Washington Redskins, winning the past 3 games, I believe. And they will be taking on the Eagles, who just lost their first game of the year. Pat?
I'm going to go with the Redskins by just a sliver. I would have gone like I would have said they were going to win by more, but Jordan Reed may not play because of this concussion, so he's entered the concussion protocol. If Jordan Reed isn't playing, that is going to be tough for the Redskins offense. But at home, Kirk Cousins has played very well the past few weeks. He's got guys like Deshaun Jackson, Pierre Garçon. And defensively, they have a couple guys coming back from injuries, kind of getting in there, and they've just played well with 3 straight wins. So I'm excited for what the Redskins should be able to do against Philadelphia and after their first loss.
Fly, Eagles, fly. I'm going Philly. I'm sticking with my boy Carson Wentz. That dude can sling the ball.
He can.
And I think he's going to put up big numbers against a Redskins team that's still pretty banged up. So I don't think they have just enough firepower back yet to get the win over Philly in this one.
I'm going to go with the Redskins in this one. Although Carson Wentz has been playing great this year, the Redskins have won 3 straight games. They've gotten kind of lucky. The win against the Giants, a couple of penalties by the Giants cost them that game. And then Rashad Perriman for the Ravens didn't get that second foot down that would have won the Ravens the game. But Kirk Cousins, awful first 2 weeks. He's become more consistent with every week. And I just think it's going to be a really close game, but I think the Redskins will come out on top. Now we have the Cincinnati Bengals taking on the Patriots. Tom Brady's first home game this season. Pat.
Patriots at Gillette, no way they lose. Tom Brady still slinging it. We saw it last week against the Browns. He should do something similar against the Bengals. I think it's going to be a huge win for the Patriots because I think that the Bengals are not as good as they were last year. I don't think they're terrible. I think they can fight for a wild card. But I do feel that New England wins the game.
Tom Brady at home, 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks, easy Patriots win.
Game over.
I'm going Patriots in this game too. You just look at how well they played last week. I mean, it was against the Browns, but it's Tom Brady. He threw 3 touchdowns for 400 yards. You can't really bet against that. It's really hard to. Kansas City at Oakland.
I went with Oakland. I think they're 4-1.
They have 1 loss. I'm not sure
they've
how
just
they played, but
shockingly played well. They have a pretty decent defense, even though I know a couple weeks ago you were yelling at me that
it's still terrible. They gave up like 30 points last week.
Looks like they keep winning though. So, and I think offensively, Derek Carr has been phenomenal. Latavius Murray had a great start to the season. He's kind of cooled off, and then Amari Cooper and Michael Crabtree have both been pretty good so far this season. So I think it should be a pretty easy win for Oakland.
I also went with Oakland. I think their defense has still been pretty abysmal, but the offense has clearly been enough to lead them to this solid start so far. And I think the real surprise player they've had this year is Michael Crabtree. I mean, he really burst on the scene. Everybody knew he was a pretty good receiver, but nobody expected him to do what he's done so far.
I'm going with the Raiders. Derek Carr is a bad man.
He is.
He is a very good quarterback, and he's probably going to be a top 5 quarterback in this league in about 5 years or so. I'm not going to say right now because there are some great quarterbacks in the league, but give it a couple years, he will be a top 5 quarterback in this league.
Maybe.
Dallas at Green Bay. Both teams playing very well to start the season.
I originally went with Green Bay, but I'm going to change it to Dallas. I have a sneaky suspicion that Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott can light it up and take down Green Bay at Lambeau Field. Let's see it, Dak. Let's see it, Zeke. I think they're going to go. I mean, I'm not a huge Cowboys fan, but for some reason they just really get me pumped up.
Not a Cowboys fan at all. They're in your division.
I know. But
I went with the Packers. I think picking against Aaron Rodgers at home is kind of like picking against Tom Brady at home. It's just something that you try to avoid doing at all costs. So I'm going with my boy A-Rod.
I really don't like the Dallas Cowboys at all, but they've really impressed me so far. I'm going to pick them. You consider it an upset, but they've only lost 1 game this year. Ezekiel Elliott might have another 150-yard rushing game. I think he's had a couple of those in a row. I think he can really take advantage of that. The Packers do have a good run defense, but I don't know if they're going to be good enough to stop Ezekiel Elliott. The 4-1 Atlanta Falcons now taking on the Seattle Seahawks at CenturyLink Field. Pat?
I'm definitely going with Seattle. I think they have. Last week, Atlanta played Denver. I think Seattle has a tad better defense than Denver, and I think offensively, Seattle is just much better than Denver is. Paxton Lynch is a rookie quarterback who isn't great, while Russell Wilson is a very talented quarterback. I think Seattle is better than Denver, and I don't think Atlanta can match up against them, especially with the mediocre Atlanta defense.
I also went with Seattle. I mean, CenturyLink Field is probably the toughest place to play in all of the NFL as an opposing team. So, and they're just a great team all around too. So I think that the luck will run out a little bit here for the Falcons.
Matt Ryan carved up the Denver Broncos defense last week. 2 weeks ago, he carved up Carolina's defense. I am going with the Falcons, and Matt Ryan is going to do the same thing this week.
Oh, okay.
And we're going to
be.
You go, man.
I hope he does, just so we can have to listen to him.
We're going to be back here next Thursday talking about what a great game Matt Ryan had.
Add him on your fantasy team.
He's going to make every excuse he can.
He's a free agent in our league, so obviously you guys don't think he's that great, or you would have picked him up.
I got Big Ben on.
I got Cam Newton.
Cam Newton didn't play last week, Colin.
Yeah, well, I have Derek Carr, too. They're
Okay.
both top 5
Exactly.
PRK guys.
Exactly. Derek Carr is better than Matt Ryan.
Statistically, it's very close, but he's not.
Why
Let's
didn't you start Matt Ryan, Colin?
That's enough about Matt Ryan this week. We'll go to Monday Night Football, final game we have here, Jets at the Cardinals. Matt, we'll start with you.
Cardinals. David Johnson is just too much on the ground. I'm not sure if they're getting Carson Palmer back this week, but I think Drew Stanton is good enough to squeak this one out against the Jets, who just haven't been that good in the last few weeks.
Ditto, dude. Moving on. Colin.
All right, I got to go with the Cardinals. I mean, they've had their struggles this year, but they're facing a Jets team where Ryan Fitzpatrick's just been playing god-awful this year.
God-awful.
Yeah.
God-awful.
And I think they're going to pick up their second win of the season here on Monday night. We now head to the NBA. The Celtics, just about to open up their season. I think they got a couple weeks until the first NBA game. The Celtics were rumored to be to be in the running to get J.R. Smith. Matt, would you like if they signed J.R. Smith?
Definitely not. I think J.R. is a good player, and I think he's a fun guy to have around. Definitely a guy who can keep the players loose in the locker room. But as far as a scheme fit with the Celtics, I don't think it works. I think J.R. shoots too much. He doesn't play a lot of defense. He doesn't pass a lot, and he likes to shoot contested jumpers. And this is a Celtics team that thrives on ball movement, sharing the wealth, and just being like a good overall team and being a great defensive team. So I don't think he fits.
Pat, your thoughts on J.R. Smith?
No. You know what they should do? They should pursue Gordon Hayward. When he was at Butler, him, Shelvin Mack, and Brad Stevens shocked the world going two straight years to the national championship
and
game.
losing both times.
I don't care. They were Butler. They shouldn't have been there. They got there. That's what brought Brad Stevens to become an NBA head coach. Gordon Hayward and Shelvin Mack are both right now on the Utah Jazz. Send them to Boston, and I'm telling you, you can get to the NBA Finals. If you can win, I'm not sure, but you know what? You need to get past the Cavaliers, and that can do it.
There have been talks about the Celtics being interested in Gordon Hayward as recent as just this past week, so it should be interesting if they end up
Why not
pursuing
include
him.
Shelvin Mack, too? What do you have to lose? He's not that expensive.
Gordon Hayward is a very good player for the Jazz, and they recently re-signed him, I think, last offseason, or maybe the one before. Either way, he's a really good player on a good young team who a lot of people are picking to surprise a lot of people this year. So it just doesn't make sense for them to trade him.
Yeah. And my thoughts on J.R. Smith, I would prefer them not to sign him. I think they could be fine with what they have. Avery Bradley at the 2, backup is Gerald Green. I think he can definitely provide the Celtics with some much-needed minutes off the bench. We now head to the part of the show where we're going to predict the awards for the NBA this season. We'll start with MVP. Matt, who's winning the MVP?
LeBron. I think he has won over the court of public opinion in terms of NBA fans and writers all around the country. And I think that you're not going to see a Golden State Warrior winning the MVP this year. There's just too much talent on that team for one person to really stand out.
Pat?
Yeah, exactly. I think LeBron, Curry, and Durant are like the three guys that might win it. And with Curry and Durant playing together, it's got to be LeBron. Cavs are going to do it. Kyrie can be his sidekick.
I'm going to go with Russell Westbrook as my favorite to win the MVP. Russell Westbrook honestly could come very close. I don't think he will actually get it, but he might average close to a triple-double this season. Especially, it will probably hurt him a little bit that Kevin Durant's not still there. But they made some trades, got Victor Oladipo, so they got some more talent. I don't think they're the same team they were last year, but I think Westbrook can still continue some fantastic numbers and maybe win that MVP award. Rookie of the Year.
I'm going to go with Chris Dunn. I think with Simmons missing time, I think that kind of just eliminates him from the race. And I guess that would make Ingram the popular choice, but I think Chris Dunn's going to find his niche in a crowded Timberwolves backcourt. I think he's going to stand out, especially defensively, and I think he'll do enough offensively to justify him getting it.
Wow. The only thing I know about him is he went to Providence College.
He did. He did indeed.
I only know where him and Simmons went. Well, no, did Ingram go to Duke?
Yes, he did.
Yes, he did, and that's why I am picking him to win Rookie of the Year, because him and Simmons were the top 2 picks, and Simmons is hurt, and that leaves Brandon Ingram to go off, to just be the guy that is the new face of the NBA. Maybe Simmons will be an injury-prone dude. It's going to be Ingram, I'm telling you. I'm telling you.
I'm going to agree with Pat. I'm not going to be that enthusiastic about it. But yeah, Brandon Ingram joining a Lakers team now without Kobe Bryant. I think he can really become a star very quickly, almost as quickly as Kobe Bryant did. I don't know if he'll reach the same height as Kobe did, but I think he definitely can lead the Lakers to a very promising young future.
The worst part is this is just how he is. This isn't even just a persona he's putting on. This is really Pat.
Yeah. Defensive Player of the Year, Pat.
Kawhi Leonard, boys. He is the small forward down in San Antonio.
Won it back-to-back seasons.
Yes, he did. He's just good.
Yeah, you could say that.
When I play NBA 2K, which is really the only time I have any association with the NBA, I always like to trade for him or Kenneth Faried because I know they're pretty good defensively, and I need some of that help on my team because I like to just randomly shoot the ball random times. So I just need some good defense to help me out. And Kawhi Leonard is a great guy to have around.
I'm going with DeAndre Jordan of the Clippers. I think he's probably it's between him and Hassan Whiteside for who you could say is like the best shot blocker in the game right now, and I think that he just affects so many shots, not just blocks them, but changes the way guys release them and causes a lot of misses. And I think that he's just probably maybe the best defensive center in the league right now.
Yeah, I'll go with the other guy you can make an argument for, Hassan Whiteside. Both of them are in a league of their own defensively as centers. And then probably Andre Drummond will probably be like third around there. But he's more of a rebounding guy. Shot blocking guys, you got DeAndre Jordan, you got Hassan Whiteside. And I think Whiteside is going to, he's slowly gotten better every season. And I think he's going to really explode this year. And maybe even be a better offensive weapon now that the Heat are missing some guys. They don't have Bosh anymore. They don't have Dwayne Wade anymore. So it's going to be interesting to watch Hassan Whiteside this season. Lastly, we'll go with the Coach of the Year award.
My man, Brad Stevens. I knew who Brad Stevens was before he was cool, before he was the Celtics coach. When he led Butler to back-to-back runner-up seasons. As number 2 in the country, I think, especially if Brad Stevens can go out and get Gordon Hayward and hopefully Shelvin Mack, because I think that'll be a wild move if he can do it. I think Brad Stevens is a great head coach. Celtics are a good team. Brad Stevens can do it. Shock the world, Brad.
And the impressive thing about Brad Stevens is he started coaching at Butler when he was in his young or low 30s. He was just only 31, 32 years old as a college or an NCAA coach. Matt, you're Coach of the Year.
I went with probably the guy who's the best coach in the NBA right now, and Greg Popovich of the Spurs. They lost Duncan, obviously, which is a pretty big loss. He's not the player he used to be, but he was still a solid player. But they replaced him with Pau Gasol. They still have LaMarcus Aldridge. They still have Kawhi. They still got Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, and the list just goes on and on. And I think he is one of those guys, one of those Bill Belichick kind of guys, Bill Walsh back in the day, who just gets the most out of every player he picks up. And I think he's just going to keep doing that until he retires.
Before I say my Coach of the Year pick, I think we need to give a lot of credit to the Spurs GM for being able to bring in that much talent over the past 25 years. It's been remarkable. David Robinson back in the early 90s, and you get Tim Duncan. Now you got LaMarcus Aldridge. So you've had a guy in your front court that's just been your anchor on defense and offense.
Don't forget Manu Ginobili.
He's not in the front court.
Yeah, I was referring to the front court.
Only the front court. Okay, that's all right.
But
he's still good.
Yeah, absolutely.
He is good.
Coach of the Year for me, I went with Doc Rivers. Clippers, I think, could really make a jump this year. There are people that have been picking the Clippers over the Spurs. I'm a little hesitant to say that, but Doc Rivers, I think, will finally lead the Clippers to the peak that they've always been expected every single year. It just seems like they've always come a little bit short. I think they're finally going to exceed those expectations. Now we're going to touch upon the NHL to finish things up. Rookie Austin Matthews, the first overall draft pick for the Toronto Maple Leafs, scoring 4 goals in his NHL debut. Matt, that's got to be impressive.
Incredible. I mean, never done before. The kid's 19. Unbelievable. I believe he scored on his first 3 shots of the game, too, which is just remarkable. And they picked up Seth Griffith off waivers from the Bruins the other day, who was another promising young prospect. And things are looking up for them.
Yeah, I think definitely Austin Matthews for the Maple Leafs. He's obviously going to be a star for years to come. And Toronto has a lot to be excited about, especially with the Toronto Blue Jays in the ALCS right now for Major League Baseball. And Austin Matthews should be good for a long time for the Maple Leafs. So Toronto, all smiles.
You think of the list of guys that have gone through the NHL, Wayne Gretzky, Mario Lemieux, Gordie Howe. None of these guys did that in their first game. So we could be seeing the making of one of the greatest players of all time. I know it's game 1, but this guy's already had a lot of hype, similar to Connor McDavid, who I think similarly could become one of those greatest players ever. Matthews, very impressive debut, and should be interesting to see how he does in his rookie campaign. Well, that's all the time we have here today. Matt Rodolakis, Patrick Varhue, I'm Colin Casey. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time here on Spartan Center.